everybody, and welcome again to Frontierland. Would you believe it's episode 7 already? We've had an incredible journey together. I hope you've had a good time since I last spoke to you, because I certainly have. Would you believe I've been on the ocean wave? I was lucky enough to be booked as the keynote speaker on the Holland America ship, the Zuiderdam, and we left Port Elizabeth back on the 13th of March, and since then I've travelled up the coast of Southern Africa and West Africa, and I've got some pictures to show you today because it's an amazing experience. If anybody has ever travelled on a cruise ship, it really is the most privileged way of seeing other countries. So for me as a speaker, it was a way to combine my passion as well as my passion for travel as well. Gary, I think we've got some pictures. We started off here in Port Elizabeth. You can see this incredible ship that I was part of. It's 82,000 tons, would you believe, 290 meters. It would hold at its maximum capacity 2,000 passengers. There were about 1,100 passengers on it while I was speaking. And would you believe I was part of what they call the Grand World Voyage? That's right, this ship leaves Fort Lauderdale in Florida in December, and it goes all around the world and only gets back in May, which is quite incredible when you think about it. So the people on this ship, they were not only very rich, but very wise people. They were traveling the world. So where did we go next? Well, as you can see from the pictures here, I had to earn my keep on this ship. You can see me on stage there. That's what I do. That's my day job. An incredible theatre, nearly 1,000 people in the theatre, and I had to give 9 keynote talks, which is amazing. As you can see there, I've got a captive audience. Especially when you have to speak every time you go to sea, it meant that I gave a lot of talks, which was quite unusual. So everything from pandemics to rugby. I even talked a little bit about the Eastern Cape, even about my book about Mikey's Fontaine, and they seemed to like it, which was great. I'm hoping they're going to ask me back because I've got some very good reviews. But I want to show you some of the places that I visited. Of course, the first stop is just down the road in Cape Town, and people said to me that this was the most magnificent city they've ever visited. There I am on the back deck of the Zuiderdam. You can see it's a Dutch registered ship with the Dutch flag flying. Beautiful day there in Cape Town. Well, it only was actually for half of the time we were there. The wind picked up and then the tablecloth came over that mountain, and many of the passengers were disappointed because they couldn't get up to see Table Mountain, which was a bit of a shame. But then that's what Cape Town's about. It is the windy city, not Port Elizabeth. Cape Town's the windy city. But where do we go next? I believe Namibia was the next stop for me, and we've got a little video of a place called Luderitz where I arrived next. Hello, it's Dean Allen here, and it's day 6 of the cruise, and we've reached Namibia, one of the world's most sparsely populated countries. And I'm in a little place called Luderitz on the coast. In fact, that bay behind us was discovered back in 1487 by that famous Portuguese explorer Bartholomew Dias. But since 1883, this place has been under the control of the Germans, or at least have very strong German influence. It became a popular port for whaling as well as seal hunting and guano collecting. And it's this curious mix of German colonial buildings and Africa. And as you can see, it's a functioning port. You can see behind me, I'm just going to show you around here. But also this curious mix of architecture in the middle of the Namibian desert. So there's sand everywhere. Quite a pleasant place though, and I'm glad I came. More from me again soon. So it's day 7 and we've got to Walvis Bay, and just along from Walvis Bay is this incredible area of sand dunes you can hear called Sandwich Bay. You can see the other vehicles there in the background. Namibia famous for one thing, sand. And lots of space. Would you believe behind me that used to be a freshwater lagoon? Now the sea has taken over. For me, Namibia was fascinating. I'd actually been there before, so I was really keen to get to the next port, which was Luanda, the capital of Angola. You can see we had a warm welcome. Traditional dancers met us on the quayside as we got off. I actually went on an official tour in Luanda because I wanted to look around, and I've got some images here that you can see. They took us to this incredible rock formation about an hour north of the city. Amazing scenery along this West Africa coast that we don't normally get to see. But there was other bits of history I wanted to see. We went to the military museum. The locals were incredibly friendly, as they were in the entire trip. They would come out and meet us as we got off the ship. But you can see from these pictures that people were keen to meet us. But the next image was quite surprising. This is the presidential palace. So Angola has a very mixed history. It was a Portuguese colony, of course, and a lot of the opulence from that period still remains. But this particular building in the next picture was something that was significant. This was where the slaves were actually taken before they were taken to the New World by the Portuguese colonizers back in the day. So we're reminded that history is so important when we visit these countries, and to have an appreciation of its past. The next country we went to, or before we get there, I've got to explain this. Has anybody ever crossed the equator on a ship? Well, what happened was, as we went across the equator, the most incredible thing happened. We were all taken up onto the deck, and this happened. Gary, can you show us the next picture? These were the sailors or the youngsters who worked on the boat, and if they'd never been across the equator before, an age-old ceremony says that they must be initiated, and that involved, as you can see, a lot of gunk and grime, and they were herded there by the pirates. The next picture, which was a lot of fun, of course, and it was part of the tradition that happened when you cross the equator on a ship. Lucky enough, I wasn't dunked in grime. We were on our way to a place called Abidjan on the Ivory Coast, and before we got there, we got to Ghana. Listen, I've lost my way here. A port called Takoradi. Really interesting port, thriving. The Ghanaian people, very busy, very friendly and hospitable. And as you can see, a lot of activity. They also had some wonderful beaches in Ghana, which I wasn't aware of. So if you think of an alternative holiday destination on certainly the West Africa coast, perhaps Ghana would be the place. We then did head up to Abidjan, which is the Ivory Coast, a French-speaking country, of course, colonized by the French. Again, we got a warm welcome from the people there. We were taken to the local markets, and again, not really given enough time to see it. We generally arrive in port around 8 o'clock and we depart again at 4. But it gives you a sense of the feeling of the country. And as one of my fellow guests said, it's an appetizer to return. So a wonderful way of just getting a taster of these places. But personally, I would have liked to have stayed a lot longer. The next place we ended up, this is leaving Abidjan later in the day. It was always wonderful to sit on the deck and look at the port as you leave. You can see all the people coming out to wave us goodbye, which is quite wonderful. The next place we went to was somewhere I'd been before, the only West African country I'd been before, which was the Gambia. The capital city is Banjul, you can see here, another thriving port. And one of my favourite places on this tour, because the people were really warm and friendly. I remember that from my first visit. This was a British colony back in the day, so they speak English. It's a relatively poor country, as the others are, but here I felt the energy was really good. The people were really friendly. And we could go and we could walk through the streets, as you can see here. From the next picture, this is the Independence Square. A lot of these countries got independence from the colonizers back in the 60s and the 70s. Gambia back in 1962, if I remember, and they've built these monuments to remind us of that. So there's always this interesting history. But it also, the children there, always with smiles, wanting to come out and meet you and to see these strange people that are walking around their town. But Gambia especially is built on the coast, so there's a fishing aspect to it as well. So we can see here traditional fishing boats made for wonderful pictures. The pungent smell of fish within that picture I wouldn't like to describe, but incredible displays of culture that you can just literally see and walk around when you get off the ship. So for me, Gambia was a highlight. I would eventually then move on to the country I was going to leave, which was Dakar, Senegal. And here we have the capital of Senegal, which is Dakar. Again, a French-speaking country. An interesting thing, we had just arrived in Senegal and the tannoy came on and the captain said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid you're not allowed to get off the ship today because of civil unrest in Dakar." Well, I was getting off the ship to go to the airport and I thought I was going to be stuck. Then they told me, "Oh no, you don't count, you can still get off," because I was part of the staff, of course, an entertainer. So they were more precious than me and off I got, but it was no problem. Dakar in Senegal was very peaceful. I didn't see any of that unrest, and I headed to the airport, as you can see here. So that was my final stop on an incredible journey around West Africa. I think we've got me getting on the plane here. Here we have. I flew back via Nairobi on Kenya Airways, so it was a long way of getting home, but I was certainly glad to get back to Port Elizabeth after an amazing 3 weeks. But I just want to leave you with this picture, because this lady was inspirational. Her name is Roselle. Now, would you believe Roselle is 93 years of age? She has now gone on 13 world cruises. And she started, she told me, when she was 76 with her husband. She lost her husband 3 years after they started cruising. And she said to me, well, what would my husband want me to do? She continued cruising, and she's now 93 years of age. She is bright as a button. She was my neighbour on board. She would always leave me little notes and quotes for the day, and she was an inspiration. But talking about inspiration, we're going to go on to tonight's show, because tonight I really have another inspirational lady for you. I'm going to bring on Jenni Gault, a daughter of Port Elizabeth, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy tonight's show.
Ooh, welcome to the show. Now it's your time to shine. We're gonna have a like a chat tonight. Another good time.
Jenni, how are you? Nice to
see you.
Nice to see you. Sorry to take up so much of your time with my cruise story.
I love the cruise story. I want to go on a cruise.
I know you do, because you love travel, don't you?
Yes, I do.
I mean,
Yeah.
we've met before. I interviewed you for my podcast on Algoa FM,
Yes.
and I always wanted to get you in the studio, because you're too much of a personality, too much of an energy to keep behind a radio mic. That's for sure. So it's lovely to have you here. And
I feel very false. I feel very like robotic. So,
you will. I tell you what. Just
drink some
have
coffee.
a drink, and you won't even notice the camera, because tonight we're going to get to know you. I must say that having announced you were going to come on the show, so many people messaged me and said, excellent, this lady has an incredible story to tell. I know the story, and some of your friends know the story, but tonight we're going to tell the wider world, because I'm sure this is a story that will be shared around the world, because it's incredible. But first of all, I want to talk about your motive, because we talked about travel.
Yes.
You've got a saying, and it's born to adventure, isn't it?
Yes, and born to climb higher.
Born to climb higher. Well, we'll certainly get onto the climbing, but
Yes.
before we go any
Born to
further,
adventure.
I want to know how you got here. You were born in Zimbabwe, weren't you?
Yes, I was born in Zimbabwe, and then we left Zimbabwe under little tricky circumstances in 2002. I've been married to Brucey, coming on Sunday's our wedding anniversary for 24 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we lived with our Beansy, hi Beansy. So Beansy's sitting in Florida right now watching me.
That's
So
Jenny's
big
son
kiss from
in
Mommy.
Florida. How you doing, Florida? Nice to see you.
And he was 16 months old, and we came down. We lived in Polokwane, which was Petersburg at the time, and for 7 years. And then Bruce actually schooled here in the 80s. He moved down with his mum. We always said if we had a boy child, we'd bring him to Grey, beautiful school.
Yeah.
And we had a boy child, so we wound up here 12 years ago. And it really is a very, very close place to our heart. There is a story amongst the family which we have a certain amount of the historical proof, but not the full proof, that Elizabeth Duncan is actually our great-great-great-grandmother.
Wow.
Yes,
Okay.
we worked with a beautiful lady, Giselle, at Seven Castle Hill for many years, tracing from India, where our great-great-great-grandmother was, and she was Elizabeth Duncan, and she had one child, George, and the journey to here. But they're missing 3 sets of birth certificates to the gran who wound up in Zimbabwe. And, yeah.
For anybody
My
that
dad's
doesn't
mum.
know, Elizabeth Donkin is the lady after which Port Elizabeth was named. A lot of people think Queen Elizabeth. It wasn't. Rufain Donkin was the Cape Governor, and he lost his beloved wife. And in honour of her, he named this town Port Elizabeth, which is quite incredible. So if you are related to the lady this town was named after.
Sort of draws my heart to think that. There's a story also that Sue Rufain cut out her heart when she died, which is a bit gruesome.
Oh my goodness.
And planted it under the Duncan Memorial.
Okay.
And then a few years later dug it out and took it back to England.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's very romantic or very ooey?
I don't know. I haven't heard that one before, but no, it's certainly a very romantic story. I mean, the guy, they said, never got over the loss of his wife, and that's one of the special things about this town. There is so much history, isn't there here? When I think it's our anniversary, by the way, of moving to Port Elizabeth, Quebec, 1 year ago, and it feels like I've been here a lifetime.
It does. I feel like you've been here forever. I feel like we've been friends for years.
I know. But that's what this special place has given me. Not only the opportunity to do these shows, of course, to interview wonderful people like you on the radio, but I think I've found my place, and our family's found our place. But enough about our love for Port Elizabeth, because I want to come back to you. So you've got this incredible energy. You're dynamic. Before we go into your climbing and your exploits and your sport, I want people to understand that you've got a very creative side as well. You're a world famous jewellery designer.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that, because that's something I'm really intrigued about.
Okay, so I actually am a qualified cordon bleu chef. That's what I studied after school. And how I became a chef was, I didn't know, we were in Zimbabwe, and I had no idea what I was going to do as a career when I left school. So I heard one of my friends saying that she was coming to Silwood in Cape Town, and she was going to study to be a chef. And I thought, oh, that sounds really cool. I'll do that. I didn't tell my folks. I wrote a letter, a Dear John letter, in an envelope with a stamp, heaven forbid, and I posted it. And I got an acceptance letter. And so I sort of sat my mum and dad down and said, I kind of got something to tell you guys, and told them. And my dad's comment was, you've never really spoken about cooking, which was true.
Okay.
The funny thing was, is I got accepted on my mid-year results, and I could cook a boiled egg and make a cup of tea. But in my finals, I actually got the whole kitchen moved out of the finals because I baked my cake with Vim. The flour bag and the Vim bag were one next to each other.
Brilliant.
And so I had, the whole building was moved up because I baked the cake and it was with ammonia.
So the point is, you had to find another specialist area.
Yeah.
You weren't going to be the next Gordon Ramsay.
No, I know. So I won the icing award at Silwood, but a chef I wasn't supposed to be. But while I was there, I started making jewellery to subsidise my allowance.
Okay.
And I realised that this was where I was going to go. And once I'd finished my diploma, I sort of went to my dad and I said, I've made a big mistake, Papa. I actually want to be a goldsmith. And he said to me at the time, he's not going to carry on paying for Jenni wants to be this, Jenni wants... Just as well he said that, because honestly he would have spent all his money in a day. But I went, anything that I learned on the bench, which I feel is the best way to actually learn, quite frankly. Yes.
And if people want to look up your work, it's Jenni Gault International Jewellery Design.
Yes, on Facebook I'm Jenni Gault International Jewellery Design, and then on Instagram I'm just Jenni Gault.
Okay.
And
that's Jenni with an I, because I got in trouble about this.
Yeah, sorry.
Not with a Y, with an I.
It's short
It's
for
my
Jennifer,
fault.
so
Of course
it's
it is.
yes, it's with an I. Yes.
Well, that's amazing enough, and I can see you've got the drive to change careers and things like that. But you've had some incredible life-changing experiences in recent years. The title of this is Climbing Mountains, Climb Higher, those kind of things. So people that know you in the last year or two will think of you as this experienced mountaineer who goes up mountains, does all these incredible things. But that's only come recently.
That's only in the last... in fact, it's 2 years ago now, end of February, was when I first decided to do Kilimanjaro. And that was before that, I'd never slept in a tent.
So you've never slept in a tent. You were sporty, weren't you? You ran, you did things like that.
Yes, I did triathlon. I did ultra-distance triathlons. And back in the day, it was a toss-up whether an ultra-distance was longer than an Ironman. And when I did my first ultra, it was in Durban in 1996. And there were 312 competitors on the start line, not thousands and thousands of people. And of them, 15 were girls. So it was a very, very new sport. It was in the days where ultra triathlons hadn't really taken off yet. And I like to think that I was a bit of a pioneer.
I was just going to say that. I think people are picking up. You like to push the boundaries. You like to do things that people perhaps say you can't.
Always. Yes. If you say I can't, then that's really for me it's a green flag. It means go.
Okay, no, I think me and you would get in trouble together, girl, I think. But no, for me, learning your story. By the way, anybody doesn't know Jenni's story, stick with us because this has got one hell of a twist in a minute. This isn't just a lady that climbs mountains. She's climbed bigger mountains in her life, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So go back to your inspiration. I believed it was in Plettenberg Bay. You went for a trek around
Robberg.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the time I was capable of a 3-kilometer drag your, let's call them tackies because they were barely much more than that, around the block, because Discovery says you need to do X number of steps a day to stay sort of healthy, okay?
That's right.
And my sort of triathlon years were way behind me, and I was never unfit, but I'd certainly lost all my fitness. And Bruce and I had taken a well-deserved weekend. It was the last week in Feb in 2021, and we ran away on the Saturday night to Plet for Sunday night and Monday night. And I said to him, while we're there, please can we walk around Robberg? And he said, Jen, I'll definitely take you. He said, but you understand, Robberg's actually quite a technical walk, okay? And I said, no, it's fine, we'll do it slowly. And what normally takes most people about 3-4 hours took us 6.5. So yes, slowly is where I go with this. But I loved it. At the end of the day, I had blisters. I was marginally dehydrated. I wasn't foolish in that respect. But yeah, I just was so stoned on life that I thought, I've got to do more of this. I made Bruce take us back there on Monday and go and do half of it again. And then on Tuesday on the way home, I said to him, listen, babe, I've got a stunning, stunning idea. And he says to me, whenever I say that, his heart just drops because it means going to Paris or going to Shanghai Fashion Week or whatever. It's going to cost him money and blood, sweat, and a lot of tears. And yes. And I said to him, I'm going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. I'm not sure how he didn't crash the car, but he just said to me, Jen, this is really not going to happen this time. And from nothing else, it was because of my medical history. Yeah.
Now I think we've got to go there. So this is a lady now who's been inspired to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, one of the highest peaks in the world. We're going to talk about Everest in a minute. And you're thinking, okay, I've heard this story before, but you haven't heard this story because you mentioned, you just throw it away, you have an interesting medical history.
Yeah.
But you have faced challenges in your personal life that most people would not have come out the other side, let alone being inspired to do what you've done. Let's just talk about those few years that changed your life in terms of your own personal setup.
All right, so worst of it started in 2007. In the 30th of June, I had a series of 4 heart attacks. What transpired is that they were actually the end of a series of 8 heart attacks. I'd had 4 minor heart attacks in a period of 6 months prior to that I didn't know about, that had done quite extensive damage. And then on the day, I had a series of 4 heart attacks. So I have had 8 heart attacks in total that, were quite awful. I was 41.
41, 8 heart attacks.
Yeah.
Some you didn't know about, but obviously you knew about the later ones.
Yeah. When we traced it back, one in Italy at a show, and then one in London at a show, where on those days I was really, really not well. We couldn't put a pinpoint, and we kind of thought, well, stress or whatever. But yeah, and what it was it just, in the morning, of 30 June, I'd actually been for a 7K run. It happened at lunchtime. I was eating a salad, drinking a glass of water. Our boy Beansy was 6 years old. He was sitting in the lounge. We were going to see Nemo in the movies in the afternoon.
A normal day.
You can't get a normal, beautiful afternoon to look forward to. And I went to take my plate through to the kitchen, and I kind of felt funny, and I thought, that's odd. And I'm really allergic to bees, really, really allergic to bees. I have an EpiPen, but it was upstairs in our home. And the phone was downstairs, and I sort of phoned Bruce, and I said to him, listen, I feel funny. I think I must have been stung by a bee, but I can't get upstairs. He said he just knew. Somewhere along the line, he knew. He was about 4 or 5 minutes away from me, and he said, whatever you do is don't get your EpiPen, because that would have been really bad news. If I'd used it, I would have died.
Wow.
But he came in the house, and he just said to me, come, Jack, let's go. Phoned the doc, and doctor said, bring me to the surgery. It was Foster. And then Doc said to him, she's having another heart attack. We cannot wait for an ambulance. You need to take her to the hospital. And then, so it was a series of 4 that they couldn't stop. And I stayed there a couple of hours in Polokwane, but they didn't have a cardiac unit. And then once I was stable enough for the ambulance to go, we went to Vilcus in Pretoria. And what the most annoying thing that came out of the whole thing is that there was never any reason why I should have had the heart attacks in the first place. I've been a ambassador for Heart and Stroke Foundation for years and years now, and I did a keynote speech for them back in 2017, and I spoke to a lot of the professors, had a big fun with the professors. I made them lift their chairs up in their dinner party and everything. But none of them could actually put an actual finger as to why it should have happened. So it was just a lot of bad luck. And I thought, well, you know what, I'm still around now, so the bad luck has to have, there was reason for it, and it's okay. It hasn't destroyed my life. It certainly took its toll on me, on the family, for the longest time. And it does. It has left scars, like when I come out and I say to Bruce, I want to go to Kilimanjaro, I want to go to Shanghai, and I'm going to go by myself because we can't afford two of us to fly. And he sits there and frets as to my well-being because of medical history. What happened also from the heart attack is when I left Vilcus Hospital, there was still a clot that they couldn't dissolve in my system. And they said to me, one of 2 options, it can wind up in your big toe or it can wind up in your brain. So my stroke risk was really, really high. And we drove back to Polokwane that night, and 8 o'clock the next morning, I did have a stroke. Wow. And I spent 12 days in hospital after that. The most annoying thing of the whole heart attack story was that 8 weeks to the date after coming out of hospital, I was scheduled to show at my first London show.
With your jewellery?
With my jewellery.
Yeah.
And I said to Bruce, there's no way, I've worked so hard to get there, I'm not going to the show. So against cardiac, against surgeon, against everybody's best sort of advice, we went and we showed in London.
You did?
Yes.
2 months after?
2 months, 8 weeks, to the day.
And do I understand as well you struggled to regain your speech as well?
Yes, it has affected my speech nerve very badly, and then my speech would come and go, and I had to sort of relearn how to speak, and I would be fine, and then suddenly I would only know that I was not speaking properly because of your change in your facial features.
Wow.
That hasn't happened in yours.
So let's put this in perspective. You're in your early 40s, you're in your prime of your life,
Yes.
You're doing shows around the world.
Yes.
You're fit, you're training, and
Yes.
then this thing happens,
Yes.
which is quite incredible. Now we can all understand, of course, why her husband was reluctant to let her go
Yes.
to Kilimanjaro all those years later. But it wasn't the only challenge you had, because what happens next? Because if that's not enough on your plate, what happens next?
In 2010 and 2012, I had to have both left and right hips replaced.
Both hips?
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
As you do.
As you do. And that came across as when I spoke to Dr. Youngjaber, he did them. And the groovy thing was, it was when the Amos hip, it's a new kind of hip that they did. It was brand new in PE, so I was like one of the first guinea pigs. And it was amazing, because so far they have taken me everywhere. And I just had bone degeneration, and it's still there. It's now getting really, really extreme, which is going to be really interesting. But so I said to him, what's going to happen next with my knees and shoulders and all that? And he said, you know what, we'll struggle with those and we'll face those when the time comes. So, yeah.
Hip replacement, 8 heart attacks,
Mm-hmm.
that's enough, isn't it? Is that enough? Anything else you want to say?
What happened next was really uncool. And this is probably the selfish I've been in my whole life. But I went for my annual mammogram. I feel very, very strongly about girls getting their mammograms.
Yeah.
I've never missed one. We support a lot of breast cancer charities. And it's coming up 5 years right now, because it was April 24, 2018. And there wasn't a lump there, I couldn't feel it. I went for my mammogram, and there was an aggressive tumour, 16 mil by 18 mil, that just didn't show up in the previous years.
Wow.
And I had to have a double mastectomy and a series of 5 operations. And then I went on a series of chemo treatments that I stopped taking when I went up Kilimanjaro of my own accord, against oncology's better judgment. And I was on chemo for 3.5 years, and it took its toll on the body, as it does. It was really horrible, but I think it worked. But by the time I decided to stop taking it, I'd had enough of my skin hurting and my hair had fallen out and my just headaches and tired and just all other things. But
and you're thinking now, my luck must change.
yeah.
So is this is where you get this incredible lust for life, this incredible drive for experiences. Anybody watching that, as I said, I told you there was a kick to this story, and it really is. I remember when we did the interview in the studio, our producer who was sitting there, who didn't know this story, he nearly, his mouth opened, he couldn't believe what he was listening to.
It really is a bad rap sheet, and when anyone talks about, people tend to talk about their ailments. And then if somebody asks, or whatever, people phone me all the time for help with it. Maybe it's somebody from the Heart Stroke Foundation, or maybe it's a referral from cancer or something. They want a cup of tea. And then they hear about the other things. It's kind of, they stop talking, and it's not a competition to see who's got the most bads. It really isn't. What it has done is it's made me terrified of losing time. So COVID was a really bad period for me. That sort of mindless waste of our precious times. Not me, everybody. All of us.
Yeah, we lost 2 years, didn't we?
We lost it.
Yeah.
Somebody stole it from us, and we will never get that back. But we can't take the last breath back. We're in the current now, and we can go forward. With women, when I do my own lives, I mean, small, a couple of hundred people watch, but I would say to them, the drive, it's not okay to sit on the couch. It's not okay to say, I'll start exercising tomorrow. It's not okay to not have a dream. You've got to have a dream. It's end of story. It doesn't matter if your dream is to own these gorgeous Merrell shoes. Just do a shout out for Merrell shoes, because they're really amazing. But if you want to get them, put them on your vision board, put them out there and save your freaking money and go and earn them so that you can have the prize. Whatever the prize is, you have to get it, because the clock's ticking. We get one shot at this. I want to be your friends. I want to be friends with Gary, and I want to meet those people out there, and you don't meet them from your lounge.
That's right. Someone who once told me things happen in my life because I get up in the morning and I go out and make them happen. But it's also an energy thing, Jenny, and I think you've got an incredible energy, and I can see how people are drawn to you, but that comes from the experiences you've been through. I think if you act as though every day is your last, and you're going to make the most of it, and I get that from you. Yeah. And well, what happens next is quite incredible, because you had that conversation with Bruce. Everybody can now understand why that lovely man was now reluctant to let his wife climb mountains, but you went ahead and did it anyway, didn't you?
Yeah. Okay, so I had to make an agreement. Sorry, I'm a fidgeter, and I really wish I wouldn't.
Fidget.
I had to make the agreement with Bruce and Beansy, and say that I would go and see oncology and bone doctor and sorry, I've forgotten, cardiology. Yeah. Before I went up the mountains, get all there okay, and at that point, then I could do it. And I went from walking 3 kilometers a day, sort of my shuffle, to actually 20 and 30 kilometers with up to 13 kgs on my back.
Wow.
And I loved it. And I was outside, something I'd never done. With triathlon days, it was a long time ago. It was when I was 26 years old. At this point, I was now 55. What the key driving factor for Kilimanjaro is that it was now February 2021. We were starting to get out of the first main lot of the COVID funk, but we were still in COVID. And I could either sit there and be another year into COVID. We had no idea when this thing was going to officially end, okay? Or I could take control of what I could control. I knew that the places I could travel were very few and far between. I knew we could travel to Tanzania. I knew the chance of them locking down Tanzania would be very, very slim. So the whole target of Tanzania was a good one. So I didn't put a target out there like go and climb one of the Americas mountains, where America was taking a really strict stand against COVID. So whilst it was a crazy-ass dream, it was also within the realistic realms of what I could achieve. Okay, I don't believe in putting out dreams there that are simply absolutely impossible to achieve, and then you set yourself up for the major fall. But there can be a difference between what I think is impossible and what the rest of the world might think.
Can I ask, is this a sense of you having control on your destiny? Because in the past, your destiny has been taken away from you somewhat, hasn't it?
I think so, Dean. As you say it, it kind of makes more sense than anything else. Yeah. And and it was. So in the beginning, March, the beginning of my training session, I was already 55. Now, we were already in the beginning of March. My years seemed to be going ahead of me. I didn't want to be, my birthday's in December, I didn't want to be turning 56 with having no experience during the year. I didn't want to get to that Christmas feeling of, well, there's another year down.
Sure.
And it taught me that you can actually slow time down yourself if you're concentrating on it. And what you have to do is you have to do things that matter during the week, experience the goods, the bads, and then like we do with our children, is on Saturday, reflect back on the week, including the bads, especially the bads. And that week matters. Your 52 weeks in a year become a life, and it grows, and it really does. And I loved it, every single step. And 50-kilometer-hour wind with gusts of 65, blowing me lit with this backpack, that walking around the golf course, near ISP golf course, just laughing. Thank goodness I got my sticks, because I would have been blown flat on my Tues. But it was funny. And every time I got home, and Beanty and Bruce thought I was stark raving mad, and it was funny. And when the rain does rain, it's me who goes out there, because it doesn't rain often enough for me to test out all my wet gear, which you have to do. So as soon as it starts raining, put all your wet gear on and go out there in the rain and train.
You're that mad lady we see walking around in the rain.
Exactly.
What I would like to say, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching this and enjoying this is your opportunity to ask Jenny some questions. I mean, Gino, who's sitting in Cape Town, hey
Gino, and there's Beansy.
Yeah, there he is. There he is in Florida.
Pardon me.
So yeah, that's me. Gino's there in Cape Town, incredible lady indeed. We all know that. She's one of Port Elizabeth's treasures, that's for sure. Gary, we've got some pictures, I believe, of some of your adventures, and let's put them up and let's explain. So this is your
my
profile,
newest infographic.
Your profile, which suggests you've like I say, there's everything to you, isn't there? I mean, your community, what you do, your dream, and those kind of things. I love the fact that you're very visual and you put things in this. I'm going to copy this, by the way. I think
you have to, because people like me can't read thousands of words. I can't. If somebody gives me 10 lines, you've lost me. No. I can have 5 bullet points and a picture, and then you've got my full attention.
I see there's the Heart Foundation. Yes. That's a cause you believe in and you support, isn't it?
Okay, so what I am is I'm what they call a brand champion. So champion because I live with cardiac disease, and brand because I speak on their behalf and I do fundraising, and I promote a brand ambassador basically, but living with heart disease. So I speak to the people, I do like lives, Zoom to people who are living with heart disease, and then if anyone's got any problems or they're just struggling with different aspects about living with cardiac disease, then I'll speak to them one-on-one, or I go out and I fundraise for them. So if I'm fundraising for myself, that was a hard thing with Kilimanjaro. I didn't have the cash, no ways, okay? A lot of my cash goes towards charity, and I'm quite happy with that. But when it came to climbing Kilimanjaro, there was no ways I was going to finance it by myself. So I thought, put a call out. It was rough during COVID to put a call out to say I would like to go and climb a mountain. But I thought there's a cause to this, okay? So what is your cause? You want to talk to people. What is your message to people? It's a little bit more than just get off the couch. And then it becomes the whole health aspect. And during COVID, what has happened is the amount of diabetes type 2 that has been created because of COVID, because people are now not getting off the couch, they're not going and socializing, they're not getting out and doing that other thing. They're sitting, when you sit on the couch, you snack, hands up anyone who does it. You'd have to be, exactly. And because of that, there's an increase of diabetes type 2. Overweight was next thing. Alcohol abuse was the next thing. They all tied into the Heart and Stroke Foundation. It's
an admirable cause, and it's something that affects all of us, of course.
It does.
What I want to do, though, is put up some of your climbing pictures now, Gary, if you've got some, because they're absolutely magnificent. Now, where's this?
This is Uhuru Peak. This is the very, very top of Mount Kilimanjaro. This was at 6:55 a.m. on the 21st of October 2021. That is Happison. Happison was my guide, my porter, A couple of people will call the porters on Kilimanjaro Sherpas. They're not. Sherpa is the surname of the people who live in the Everest region. Okay, so they're porters on Kilimanjaro.
Okay.
And he dragged me up and taught me all the Kilimanjaro songs. And when I was ready, I wasn't ready to quit, but there were some dark moments in the 8 hours it took to get me up there. So
and what height is Kilimanjaro?
Is 5,895 meters.
5,895 meters. Table Mountain is
1,200. I
it's
think.
5 times the height of Table
Yes,
Mountain,
it is.
basically.
Yes,
Okay. And how many times would that chap have been up and down there?
He'd been up 21 times.
21 times. And,
Yeah.
and tell me, have you got any altitude issues there in terms of
I
thickness
have
of air?
not struggled, touch wood, with altitude at all. I take it very seriously, as you have to.
Yeah.
I mean, the mountains, once you get above 3,500 meters, all the mountains have messages everywhere about acute mountain sickness and dizziness and headaches and all that. But for me, the key is eating the right meals, small meals frequently, drinking water. I drink 4 to 5 liters a day. You have to train to drink that much water because it's a lot of water.
Yeah.
And keeping sugar levels sort of stable, sleeping but not sleeping too much, sleeping in short intervals. So studying altitude sickness, I thought what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I give my body the best chance I've got of this. And so far I have had no issues with altitude at all.
But the problem is with you, Jenny, Kilimanjaro is not enough. You
No,
then
it's
had
not.
to go to the next level,
Yes, I
didn't
did.
you? Which was Everest, I believe.
Okay, so I went to the Everest region.
So we're still on
Okay, this
Kilimanjaro,
is my
go on.
team. So
Okay.
Bella, who's wearing the long red jacket, I met her. She was a single climber like me. We were both together, and she's a dear friend. So Bella walks at a normal human being's pace, and I walk at a what I take from Tanzania is pole pole. Pole pole is Swahili for slowly.
Okay.
For me, compared to the other climbers, I'm like the tortoise and the hare. Okay, I'm going to beat most of them, but I'm going to do exactly like the tortoise and the hare.
You're
So
gonna
I
get
am
up
the
there.
hare.
Okay.
The tortoise,
The
I beg your
tortoise,
pardon.
yeah.
Nice try, Jenny. Yeah, so those were our porters who took us up to the top.
Where's this?
And this was at the very end of the whole up to the top of Kili and back.
Look at you, you're like a picture of health there.
Okay.
I mean,
When I was there on that day, I was very broken. I was
Were you?
quite pleased to be at that signpost.
you put on a good show,
That was
girl, I tell
a
you.
long way. Okay, this is the start of my expedition to Everest region, and this is such a fun one because what had happened is I got there and the weather was abominable. Now, what you learn very quickly as a mountaineer is that the mountain weather will do what the mountain weather will do, and you've got zip control in it. So all the flights to Lukla Airport, which is the most dangerous airport in the world, were cancelled. And I could hear there was talks about helicopters and all that. Also, again, I'd gone on a shoestring and a prayer, and I thought, Sherbet, there's not going to be a flight. 5 flights had been cancelled. I'd been there since 4 o'clock in the morning. And I phoned my tour operator and I said, come on, guys, you have to help me out. I literally got 0 cash. But I want to get on the mountain now today. Okay, I booked in 2 extra days for just in case, and I was very grateful for that later on in the expedition. But I managed to get on this heli. But from the time of sitting, literally waiting, watching the board saying delayed flights, I put 0 thought into what it was going to be like to go in a helicopter. I've never been in a helicopter before. I've always thought there's no ways I'd ever do stuff like that. And so what I did was I just ran, and then as we were outside the helicopter, I thought, oh, what if I can't do this? This is going to be all right. You've got no choice now. Check, there's no bailing out of this one. Jumped in, and it was the most divine experience ever. I want to be a helicopter pilot now.
Wonderful.
It was really cool.
So that's you. You take it. You grasp the adventure and go with it. And who's this guy? Raj?
Okay, that's Raj. Raj is my Sherpa who took me to base camp in the top of Mount Kalapatar.
So it's just the 2 of you. You
It's
get
just
a
the 2 of
personal
us.
Sherpa, yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've just gone as an independent because I couldn't find anybody at home who wanted to come and climb with me.
Okay.
And on safety and security, read a lot about both Tanzania and about Everest region. And there's so many climbers all the time that you basically on Kili, you're sleeping in your own tent, but there are thousands of people in the campsite. And on Everest, you are sleeping in your own room in little villages with hundreds of people and climbers. So you're with people all the time. So even if you go as a girl by yourself, you're actually not a girl by yourself at all. So yeah, I think from safety that's
point of view, no, that's
so okay. So this was where it started to get. This was much higher up in the mountain now. Now we're getting to about 5,000 meters. And I put this picture in just to show how the day started off sunny and short sleeves. And very quickly, after about 8 days, we were in this sort of condition. And it was really, really chilly.
Is that a South African flag?
I take my flag everywhere. Good. And it's divine because what happens is on the mountains, you meet people and you get to know them, but you never know their names. So normally people identify you by your colour of your backpack or your whatever. So I'm always called South Africa. And it's divine. I absolutely love it because you walk past people and they say, hey, South Africa. Yes, hey, Red or whatever. Yeah. Okay, that I put in there because when I sent that home to Bruce and Beansy, I said, oh, big hairy yak. And Bruce sent a message back to me, which I found extremely funny, saying, I didn't know yaks wore red jackets.
I knew that was coming. He's going to get in trouble.
Yeah. Okay,
here we go.
So now, what happened was up until this point, my expedition had gone really, really swimmingly. This is day 9. This is in the Khumbu Valley. And this is the very only beginning section of the Great Khumbu Fall. And it was about half an hour after this picture, I was in a situation that I have never been this terrified in my life. And I'd packed incorrectly, rookie error, and I'd sent my raincoat ahead. I knew it was going to be chilly, but it was high enough up and it shouldn't rain that high in the mountains and blah, blah, blah. And I got caught in a blizzard and I got wet and it blew and I got cold and really, really cold. Now, when you're starting to walk in the glaciers now, you lose the paths. There's no more paths because the glaciers move all the time. So any of the nice footpaths that we've been following to this point are non-existent. Okay. And this section of the hike should have taken 3 hours. It took 6.5 hours, but of high level stress. And I had an hour and a half to go when I finally had the courage to say to Raj, listen, how far? I was hoping he was going to say 20 minutes. Because for about an hour, I'd been thinking, don't ask him. Eventually I said to him, Raj, how far have we got to go? And he said an hour and a half. Oh. And I was just finished.
Which is a lifetime up there.
No, it was just, that was in my life, this has got to be one of my bleakest, scariest moments. I couldn't go back. You go back, go forward. I was caught in this blizzard. My gear had gone ahead of me. There was no way of getting warm clothes. Sure. And it just, to me, it just showed that life has those days. The next slide I've put up is 4 days later, the exact same place. And this is life. One day the Khumbu Valley is like that, and then the next day Khumbu Valley is like this, and it's all sunshines. The smaller mountain in the far back is actually Everest. And although it looks so much smaller, it's actually a long way back. Yes. Okay. Yeah. And the one in the forefront is Mount Lutze, one of the other 8,000 meter peaks.
Because what do they call them? The Whites?
The Great Whites.
The Great Whites. Yeah. There's a range of mountains. Yes. People think it's just Everest on its own, but there's a range.
The Great Whites are all the 8,000 meter mountains that sort of surround this particular area.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, okay. They're beautiful. The Great Whites, the big whites. They are so incredible. One thing is when you're trekking like this, it is peaceful beyond anything you can imagine. Because once you leave Lukla Airport and you get out your helicopter, there are no roads. There's not a single car, not one, not even a service car, not an ambulance for emergencies, nothing. Helicopters can get into certain points for rescues, but they can't, there's no road. There's no gas station.
So you realise how vulnerable you are.
You are very vulnerable, yeah.
No, without a doubt. So how long did it take you to get to is this at base camp?
Okay, no. So what happened, from Khumbu Valley, I walked to my sort of base camp, if you would, Gurukship. And by the time I got there, my soul was broken. And I said to Raj, we're not doing Everest Base Camp today. We're going to pause that out, taking 2 extra days. We're going to take one of those days now, good, call because I wouldn't have made it. And this is actually the summit of Mount Kalapatar. And what I did was I did a double summit in one day, because I said to him, tomorrow we'll go up Kalapatar first, and then we'll do base camp second. And it was the best experience. And this is at 5,600 odd meters. And getting up here was a real trek. It's a trekking path, except for the last 200 meters is climbing. And this is my sort of hardest. Kelly did have some moments like this, but not quite to this extent. And this was, for me, was just amazing. I just loved this mountain.
Is that Everest in the background?
No, that's actually Mount Pommery, and then on the other side is Everest. I might have put one of the shots of Everest. No, that's just, that's Mount Choyo in the background of there. But from there later in the day, so we came down from Kalapatar and then had a meal, then went to base camp, sort of separate direction. And
so for people who can't imagine this, what does the base camp look like? Are there dozens of people there? Or?
Okay, when I went, it was out of season. Right now it's in season. My summit day for Mount Kalapatar and base camp was 14 September last year, 2022. And it's completely out of season. So there's only one camp there, which is a science camp, which they keep all year round. Now is the high trekking and climbing season. So I've been watching on all the socials as all the people are starting to arrive in now. So for the last 2 weeks and going forward, all the big companies send their people in, and they live there for about 60 days, 50, 60 days, depending on the weather, to get to the top of the Everest.
So the way it works, you book the day you get to the summit, and you've got to make that day. That's your time slot. Is that
no,
it's not that strict.
No, it's not that strict. It depends. Everything depends on the weather.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, it's interesting. Would you say what was the most rewarding, Kilimanjaro or Everest, would you say, in terms of...
Okay, the question always asked, and then the other question is, which is the hardest, Kilimanjaro or Everest? It's impossible to tell. They are two completely different expeditions. Which one I love the most? No, I can't tell you. Which one I'd go back first? Whichever air ticket landed in my hand, I can't tell you. I think I'm most drawn in my heart to Kilimanjaro, but I think I'm African. I understood the whole way, meaning it just made sense to me. I connected one-on-one with the people, with the country.
It's on our continent.
It's on our continent. We belong there. And subsequent to that, I brought out a collection called I Was Born in Africa. That inspired me there. And so I think I'm African at heart. So Kelly would probably top Everest region, except that completely different. Everest is so beautiful. Yeah. Walking between the rhododendron trees and the forests, and it's exquisite. Amazing. And waterfalls, so much water. It's just insane.
Amazing. So it's a silly question. You're not finished yet, are you?
No, not even vaguely. I'm not even started yet, which I think is scary for my family. Yeah, and I say that respectfully.
Yeah, Bruce, start saving up, boy. I tell you, she's going again. So we had a discussion off air about there's a iconic place that you want to go next. Now,
yes.
Tell me about it.
So whenever anybody says to me, okay, where would you go next? I think they always think that like Everest would come out my mouth. I never thought I would ever say that I would like to do Everest, but maybe it's in the back of File X, I don't know. But I would dearly like to go to Antarctica and climb Mount Vinson there. Okay. So Mount Vinson, with all due respect, and I say this tongue-in-cheek, is only 4,300 meters, so it's a height I've been to before. But of course, its biggest challenge is the weather conditions. I mean, it is Antarctica, and you just don't control it. But when you look at Antarctica, it is the most beautiful continent, and it is so clean, and they've kept it in such pristine conditions. And to go and see the penguins in the wild there, we've got beautiful penguins here, and I love them, but penguins belong in Antarctica. Yeah. And
it's not if, it's when, Jenny, and I'm sure it will happen, because anybody with your energy and spirit will make it happen, because you not only what you're doing now, and remember, this is only the last few years you've been doing this. It's not as though you've been climbing mountains all your life, but it was something major that happened in your own personal life, And we've heard this story before, that life-changing experiences can give you a new perspective. But you were challenged not once, not twice, 3 times in terms of, really major medical challenges. But you've gone on, and as I said, you've got this incredible energy. So it just lent itself for you to come on the show. I mean, Frontierland's about inspirational people. I've interviewed the most incredible people. But as I said, your story, it's mind-blowing because of what you've overcome. And not only that, your spirit. And I know you're never going to lose that. And we're all following your journey, that's for sure. And as I said, watch this space, because I think we'll be seeing you on that.
Yeah, I think sometimes I'm a really good swimmer, and half of me thinks, I wonder if you could really swim there, or kayak, or I don't know. But there's got to be a way of getting to Antarctica.
There'll be a way, and there'll be a means. And as I said, and you do a lot of your work for great causes as well, and that's always that's even more commendable, isn't it? It's not as though it's just for you. You're doing it to spread this knowledge.
You know what? There is something out there, and I think, Dean, the most important thing is people say, oh, you've always got energy. There definitely are up days, and there definitely are down days, and there definitely is. We've just gone through month end, and I hate the month end bills as much as the next guy. And working for a living, I'd stop everything in a heart and a beat, and I would go and climb mountains. I would go and live in Lady Slipper if I was given half a chance. Maybe taking my tent's not a bad idea. But we've got to actually do it for ourselves. And if anyone is listening, and if you are taking inspiration from this, what I can say to you is you've got to do it. You've just got to write down something, but put it something a little bit out the ordinary. Yeah,
like you said, it's a dream, but it becomes a reality if you follow that, isn't it? I mean, that's it. Let me give you a hug, because you are incredible. You're just incredible. Thank you so much for coming on. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this. Please do share this episode, because it is inspirational. It's an amazing story, isn't it? And it needs to get out there. So thank you for your time. We'll see you next time on Frontierland.